Hello everybody, it's vanburman here. Welcome back to another video, and today I have the somewhat pleasure of discussing Dragon Age Veilguard, and we've gone very much on theme today with the colours and the background and all the rest of it, because not only am I very much in the dark, which I am in regards to the Veilguard game, but we also have this very aggressive pinky purple going on as well, which is like the Veilguard colours. It's everywhere. It's a very interesting choice of colour palette, to be honest. And I guess one of the reasons I wanted to, or a couple of reasons I wanted to play it. Number one, I'm a pretty big fan of the Dragon Age games in general. I think Origins is a complete masterpiece, and it's definitely one of those games that sort of, I guess, like kind of really got me into the different style of RPGs, and therefore quite a big impact. And I played it through with all the races and all that kind of thing, and I really liked the story of the Darkspawn and the Grey Wardens and all of that. I thought it was a really good jumping off point in particular, and also at a time when BioWare was really making some great RPGs, as well as like Mass Effect, other games that BioWare were making. There's many of them. They don't all come to mind at the minute. And now we're in a stage where we've sort of kind of seen, in my opinion anyway, my humble opinion, the decline of BioWare and just generally EA as well in general. And I think, to me, that probably sort of started with Mass Effect, or maybe like during the cycle of Mass Effect 3. Comes as no real surprise either for people to know I'm not really a huge fan of the Assassin's Creed games, which are very kind of like EA staple. And there definitely is some of that is sprinkled in there in Veilguard, which to some of you might be great. To me, not so much. And it picks up from Inquisition, which I actually rated really highly back when that came out. And I thought it was actually more of a step up, particularly when balanced against Dragon Age 2. I will say that Veilguard makes Dragon Age 2 look much better in hindsight, but of course hindsight is 2020 and not in the dark like we are currently. And yeah, there's a number of things that I wasn't necessarily really very pleased with at Inquisition. Obviously, as mentioned before, I saw a lot of the press and things regarding Inquisition prior, and I thought, as well as obviously really liking Dragon Age, surely this is a game I should be looking at. I guess before I get into gameplay and that side of things, I probably should say that I didn't find the game particularly like offensive, controversial, anything like that at all, which I know has been some of the rhetoric around the game, quote unquote, being woke, I suppose. There certainly is some of that, I suppose. I only played about halfway through. I didn't enjoy it enough to want to play it all the way through. I wasn't really that much invested in the story. They've sort of, I guess it kind of feels, I'm going on many tangents now, but it kind of feels to me as though they've done like the season 3 of The Boys, I think it is, where they have Homelander's dad, Soldier Boy, come in, and it sort of almost feels like a filler episode, a filler season, and that is kind of how Veilguard is linked up to me. It doesn't feel as though we're really advancing anything, whereas at least with the other two, there was that whole, Chantry versus Mages type of thing that was going on that spawned off the back of Origins. And yeah, I expected it to be like some grand showdown with Solus, but instead, like, as I say, many halfway through, but we kind of like him now, or do we? I don't know. It's kind of a bit strange, like lesser of two evils kind of thing. So yeah, it was not endeared by the way the overarching story, in fact, had gone. But I guess I should probably just clear that up before we start. And then I got some further thoughts alongside some of the gameplay that I've taken. I've recorded all of my sort of 15-ish hours or so of the game. Got pretty far, that kind of thing, and there's just not enough in there for me to want to play it or find out really what happens. I think a very quick YouTube, in fact, would allow me to know where the story ends up going with Veilguard, and I feel like I'd be fairly happy with that. I didn't really find the characters too endearing. Obviously, Varric has been a mainstay of the series for some reason, and he continues to persist in this game as well. And I've always found him a bit like grating. He's almost got that kind of like Jack Black feeling to him. I don't know who he's voiced by, but yeah, and I very much don't like Jack Black either. So, but because in my mind they're quite similar characters and personas and that kind of thing, like very much smelling their own farts, I guess, how you might say. Yeah, so I've never really felt that close to Varric through the whole of the thing, and he sort of kind of plays this narrator role as well, so you do have to listen to him quite a bit. But yeah, fundamentally it is, if you want the TLDR, well, I know we're already like however many minutes into the video, but if you want the TLDR, it's basically a fairly inoffensive average game that has Dragon Age-y bits to it, but also didn't need to be necessarily a Dragon Age-y game. It's sort of kind of using that as its foothold into the story, or to have a story, I should say. But it very much was stacking up to me like feeling like a filler episode, which, I mean, you could argue that about Inquisition, but it kind of built up this story that I was then expecting us to sort of really hit home on in the next game. It just doesn't feel like it's moving towards that at all. Which, don't get me wrong, there's many games there's been 11th hour twists, so yeah, I would probably may well eat a particular hat, a metaphorical hat, I should say, if that turns out to be the case. But yeah, if you're on the fence about it and you really like Dragon Age, I'd wait until it goes on sale, for sure. I think now I'm doing my outro, aren't I? Anyway, we'll get through some gameplay, I'll show you what it looks like, and we'll talk through some of the mechanics.
Now, Solus wants to tear down that veil and undo the damage he caused, even if that means our world has to burn. Somebody's gotta stop him, and that's where you come in.
And yes, we come in with having actually, to be fair, a decent amount of choice in terms of races, the usual classes, and our appearance as well. So, I mean, it's probably certainly not as comprehensive as some other character creations, but, easy enough to utilize and to use. I probably would say that, I guess because of the kind of art style that they've gone for, everyone is a bit too cleansed, I suppose. Difficult, in fact, of having anyone in the game that looks like they might be a bit rough or haggard, with the exception of some damage and injuries and that kind of thing. But yeah, there's also only seemingly so much you can do to change certain bits as well. It's kind of minor tweaks here and there. You also can't, which I only noticed upon actually playing, make your character bigger, in terms of taller or shorter. Your character's actually fairly short in the game compared to other characters, and there's not really anything you can seem to do about that. I don't know if that's purely sort of to help your player character move around in the world, but it's, I guess, just something worth noting. I also don't get why we have all these different backgrounds. Do people take a lot of photos of their character at this point in the creation bit? I don't know. I'm honestly not very sure. I decided to speed that up quite a bit just to get us through it. And we also get this nice aspirational armor, that kind of thing, which is kind of rather MMO-y. You can switch between what armors you may get later on in the game, rather than obviously what you'll start with, which is obviously bound to be a lot less impressive. We then have I want to talk a little bit more actually about appearance options at the end of this, but we now have what faction we're in, and then how that sort of fits in with the world. They sort of play into the main ones that are in the actual game themselves, and in similar Dragon Age fashion, we get different last names based on that, which we did in Origins as well, where we had this kind of choice, or even though it's an origin rather than I guess that these are Origins as well, the factions that you end up becoming a part of, and then that influences how you can interact with those factions in the story. I mean, I guess that's no surprise really. That sort of makes a bit of sense, adds a bit more flavour to your player character. It's also done the thing though that I really do dislike, where you're clearly playing a character that has like a set background, set story, set name as well, and people don't refer to you by your last name, they refer to you as Rook, I presume, for rookie, I guess, as a sort of name. But you do get the option to to give yourself a first name, which is never used. So that's brilliant. Like I say, pet peeve of mine. You do get to pick the options, so I went for like the second option here, which is Keeper. I ended up having to put it up to Adventurer because Keeper was far too easy, and it's very unlike me to put the combat difficulty up, but it was getting quite tedious with kind of just, I guess, how unpunishing it was, and you kind of need to do your defending and riposte and that kind of thing to actually speed up the battles and for it to actually feel real, I guess. At least that's how I felt it was like, I suppose I should say. Okay, yeah, here's the character name screen, but yeah, it's really really strange as well. I mean, we also get the option we don't get the option to load in our Inquisition data. I don't know, because honestly I don't have it on this computer, so I wasn't sure whether that was a quirk or whatever, but you then sort of get to pick a little bit of the background of the Inquisition character for some reason. I don't know, very strange. It didn't give me the option to import it, so you just start off as a female whatever in the game, and then you have to sort of pick who you romanced and that kind of thing. Don't know, I might have missed something on that. I'm not going to judge that too hard at this point. Now, it also does one of the other things that I really don't like, and it's clearly there just to be able to shift or like strong arm in the aesthetic, like the appearance pre-order bonus type of thing, and that is that you can add an appearance to your blades and armor at any time, regardless of what armor it is that you've picked up or found. And that to me really, like, one, you take away all the artistic work that's gone into designing a lot of these weapons and armors, and two, like it doesn't, like, you don't, that, like the original Dragon Age armor, right, doesn't feel like as powerful and as impactful as it should. A lot of people apparently don't like this armor. Don't know why. I'm a big fan of it from the Origins game. But yeah, it kind of feels a little bit fake, like a coat of paint almost over your armor. Like, I don't know, like having like putting on a cardboard shirt and writing, male armor over it. I don't know. And then expecting it to do the same. Like, I don't know. I explained that very badly, but the point is, I don't really like these just pure aesthetics bits. You then also, when you put things in casual wear, also get this thing to say, oh, it's going to clip, by the way, if you choose to do it. And it's so you know that it's going to be a problem, yet you allow them to do it anyway. It kind of looks a little bit unprofessional to me as well. And we're now going to go into some of the dialogue sections. I did leave my microphone on while I was playing, so just to try and see if I gave any funny reactions, I suppose, for this particular video. So you will also hear me in these as well, but just kind of a bit of a flavour as to what you can expect from some of these, like, party dialogue and dynamics, that kind of thing.
They're the same thing. Mostly, kind of.
Except one will manipulate you, or kill you, or both.
But how do you get rid of them?
What's everyone talking about?
Spike.
The demon in Lucanus. When a person gets possessed, the demon usually takes control.
And they turn into a monster. The spirit just molds them however they want.
I've heard of abominations being cured by killing the demon in the Fade. That's not a sure bet, though.
Well, there's one way, but it's, well, we'd have to,
You'd have to kill me.
Yeah, sure. Let's do it.
If things get out of hand, that's always an option.
Careful of him. I want to talk to him.
Before we do, well, let's think this through some more. There has to be a solution.
I have people in Marathas I can ask, but I wouldn't get my hopes up.
All right. So what next?
Let me talk to them! I want to talk to...
Lucanus!
Nope. It's fine. I'm fine.
Need to cut this guy loose. This is not fine.
Don't pretend this is all right. It wouldn't be fine if another person did it.
No, but there's nothing I can do about it. If it were another person, I could solve this with a knife. Just give me a minute. He'll get bored once everyone leaves.
No offense.
Why can't we kick
but
him out?
Having an abomination in the lighthouse makes me nervous.
Well, being an abomination makes me nervous too.
Lucanus.
Please.
Alright, some friction.
Glastrom, First Warden and Supreme Commander of Weishaupt.
Should I not
I
already know
received
this?
word of your team's request for Grey Warden assistance after an incursion of the Blight at Demeter's Crossing.
When did we send that?
Explain yourself, Warden. And bear in mind that the Order remembers your past recklessness.
Go on then.
Sure, I disobeyed orders. I acted on my own choices without authority. I admit it.
Well, they
But
know.
I took
You
an
don't
oath
need to
to
admit
defend
it.
people from the Blight. I uphold that oath any way I can.
Your report, Warden.
I was part of a team trying to stop an elven mage named Solus from destroying the Veil. When we disrupted his ritual, something escaped from the Fade, and I clearly sensed the corruption of the Blight.
From this mage, Solus.
No, sir. Solus opposes the Blight. He's actually an elven god, Fen Harel, the Dreadwolf.
I did not come here to listen to fairy tales. I am here because of the Blight.
I like this guy. He makes sense. We don't make much sense.
It's no
You're not
fairy
appealing
tale.
to the right.
When we stopped Solus, something got out. According to the Veil Jumpers, it was the elven gods Elganan and Gillenane. And they're not just
More
evil.
fairy tales.
They're blighted.
This guy
The
probably
point
thinks
is
Belgium
that
was
the
the fairy
gods are
tales
making
too.
the Blight worse. Demeter's Crossing was just the start. That's why we need the Grey Wardens.
I suspected more politicking from the remnants of the Inquisition. I see now that I was wrong.
I'm really glad to hear that.
It is clear that whatever you did to unleash the Blight has corrupted your already weak mind.
Okay, wait.
Oh, I like this
You
guy.
will be taken to Weishaupt and
Yes.
placed under heavy guard until the danger you caused by unleashing the Blight passes.
Yes, he's right. He is right. We
No.
can't.
Please, you can't do that.
Yep.
I assure
Arrest
you,
him.
I can.
I don't know how much time we have. The gods are doing something with the Blight. We need to stop them.
No,
Let me
arrest him.
tell you something
Arrest
about the
him.
Blight. It is evil, it is implacable,
Yes.
and above all, it is predictable. The Blight has not changed in over 1,000 years. The Grey Wardens will defeat it, as they always do.
You say
And we will
we.
do so without a disgraced junior warden causing needless confusion. I suggest you come along quietly.
Adamant Fortress 941, Dragon. The Grey Wardens attempted to raise an army of demons. Hardly the models of good judgment yourselves, are you?
Everyone knows Warden Commander Clarel acted alone at Adamant Fortress.
Acted alone, you say? Imagine if everyone were to see the letter I discovered where you authorize her actions. I wonder how that might complicate the narrative.
Are you prepared to risk the security of the Grey Wardens for this deluded boy?
You may be surprised to learn that I care very little about the security of the Grey Wardens.
Stay away from the Blight, and do not pester the Grey Wardens with any more of your nonsense.
He seems upset.
What?
Was it something I said?
Okay.
You have blackmail material on the leader of the Grey Wardens just lying around?
Of course not.
You know, for a
Where
second
would I
there, it
obtain
got really
something like
interesting.
that?
Oh, you were bluffing. That's actually scarier.
Magister Dorian Parvis, at your service. A mutual friend thought you might require some support.
Ivaris Talani of the Shadow Dragons.
The very
You
same.
meant to say that. Should you be saying that?
So now what? The first warden tried to have me locked up. I need the wardens on my side.
Jowen Glastrom is not the Order. He's more politician than warden. No Grey Warden worth the name sits in a Menrathus lounge sipping wine. You need the wardens? Look for the ones out there fighting the Blight. In the meantime, the Shadow Dragons will keep a close watch on the Venatori.
Oh, dear.
Good luck. I'm sure we'll see each other again soon.
Projectiles are my only... So it's probably quite obvious from that I maybe wasn't most enamored by the outcome and conclusion of the storytelling in some of the dialogue. Definitely feels quite wooden, I would suggest, a lot of it, and there is this kind of cognitive dissonance of not knowing, or like kind of like the dialogue that would be there for your non-faction specific stuff coming out in a way that is not congruent, I guess, with what people may or may not know. Like, somehow this guy doesn't know who the first warden is. Bit bizarre in terms of that. And I know that you have to try and tell the audience who people are. I get that, but there's got to be another way of doing it for the characters that are Grey Wardens. The game also kind of like takes a massive number 2 on the Grey Warden story and that kind of thing, and it also is not totally congruent with what we know about the Grey Wardens from previous games. Just some like general inconsistencies, I suppose, in terms of like the order and how we're run and that kind of thing. Not like massively, but you know, it definitely doesn't really feel very Grey Wardeny. So yeah, there's a lot of this like faux conflict that goes on in the game, and then like you know, no real tangible decisions that feel impactful or actually have a consequence on your party. And I know I only got halfway through the actual game itself, but feel as though you could have established that a little bit earlier on. Anyway, we'll get into the combat, seeing that's what we've been watching for the last minute or so. And admittedly, this fight is against an enemy that I am quite underleveled for. I think about 5 or 6 levels. And it obviously takes a long time to whittle down, but it's gives you a good idea of like the Darkspawn Blight forces that you have to fight during the game. And I sort of feel as though the character design is, I don't know, it's not as good as the previous games. I don't think the Darkspawn and such, and a lot of the enemies look any better than they have done in previous games. In fact, I was watching the trailer to Dragon Age Origins, and I was thinking, you know what, the Darkspawn actually look better here. So it's a bit of one of those, I guess. The attacks and varies and how it mixes up is fine, I guess. A lot of the battles, particularly for like the quote-unquote mini-bosses, take a long time, and this is an extreme example because I'm underleveled for it as well. But it sort of also highlights, even though it's quite obvious throughout the whole rest of the game, that your companions don't really matter in terms of they can't be down, they don't have a health bar, none of what they do is really important, and the big like boss guy, mini boss, he will target the player character exclusively. Like there is an amount of, a very small amount of like targeted aggro that your companions can do. But they don't do anywhere near as much damage as your character. I don't know if that's fine, main character stuff. But it doesn't feel as though you're building in a party, you know, with characters that you care about. And yeah, that's kind of a bit of a big disappointment, I suppose, because it is definitely a step change from previous Dragon Age games and games of that ilk. It's, you know, by far a lot more combat-y and a lot less like an actual RPG. I don't know. In many ways, it's kind of weird. It feels more like God of War than Dragon Age Origins in its gameplay, really, which may well be better for the mainstream, but not if you're a particularly big fan of RPGs in general. Yeah, some enemies obviously have to be... There's a decent enough variety in the moves and things that enemies do, but it does start to get pretty boring and repetitive, particularly when you're like fighting the same types of enemies over and over again. A lot of like smaller enemies are in there as filler, basically, and buffed up to seemingly to take longer to kill. Like there's no... I think the thing is, there's some fights where there's never any doubt you're going to win and kill the troop or mob that you're up against. But it's more just how long it seemingly takes you to do so is more the challenge. The patience is more the challenge than the skill. And as I said, I already had ranked up the difficulty in order to give me a bit more of a challenge. But yeah, I wasn't seeing that as in bigger health bars or extra, armor on top of their health bars. Meant to be more intense, like timing and move selection, that like upgrading the right way, that kind of thing. But most of that's really taken out of your hands, to be honest. And this is one of the first fights in basically nearly the whole game up to this point, about 10 hours in, that I actually started to try and use my companion's abilities, because the abilities are very much in line with your own character's abilities, so they do a decent amount of damage. Basically, a lot of the game is about ripostes, defending at the right time, hitting on the counter attack, and depending on who you take, some party members will heal you, taking a real keen interest in your own health, because that's the only thing that really matters in this game. So the combat, a lot of people might enjoy it, but yeah, it kind of feels almost like that step change from Origins to Dragon Age 2, where it just doesn't feel as though it fits in the RPG world that has been, the franchise, I guess, but I guess some people would call it revolution, definitely revolution rather than evolution in this sense. But to me, far more dumbed down and far less, team, squad, party-based RPG. So I do actually eventually take this guy down about like a 20-odd minute fight. So I'll just speed it up here so you can get to the end of it. And there are all these like mini bosses scattered around throughout the world in their own individual. So in a nutshell, I found the combat to be fairly uninspired and rather repetitive, and I guess like just sort of quite boring by the end of it. Although other people, obviously mileage may vary, I often quite enjoy the mundane tactical nature of RPGs, and in particular Dragon Age games. Even like Inquisition managed to be fluid enough where, not so fluid enough, but like brief enough in its encounters with enough weight to keep me engaged for a full playthrough of them. But I would say part of the reason I didn't do a full playthrough of Inquisition is mainly due to the repetitiveness of the combat, but also the general gameplay exploration, which once I finally defeated this mini boss here, I'm going to be talking and showing some examples of, or an example I suppose, of the exploration. For those of you wondering, that was at only 7.5 times speed, or 750% compared to 100%. And yeah, as you can see, it took quite a while, even though underpowered, but yeah, so maybe not the best representation. So now we get on to general exploration. It is kind of one of those collectathon-y type games where you pick up a load of random trash and then have to sell it later to the merchants, and that then increases that particular, whatever faction you decide to sell it to, increases their particular strength. Hopefully that plays into something towards the end game, although ultimately not too sure. A lot of your companions have like special abilities that allow you to create makeshift bridges or to unlock wisps so that you can open gates, that kind of thing. And luckily, because you have a special dagger, you can utilize the abilities of your party members that aren't there, so you're not locked out of bits in stages into the general exploration and, you know, to access chests and that kind of thing when they're not around. So that bit in itself is actually pretty good and like quite intuitive, I would say. So you don't have to come back with a different party member and do it that way. And yeah, probably actually one of the good. If you're going to implement that into your game, that's probably one of the good things to do, I would suggest. There's a lot of what I would describe as like semi-parkour, so lots of vaulting over things, that kind of thing, climbing ladders, dropping down. It's interesting enough to mention that there is no fall damage. If you drop from too high a height that would kill you, you get put back on the ground where you were when you jumped off. So it does give you the option to jump around quite a bit and try out different heights and that kind of thing, but it's not always particularly terribly intuitive and keeps you in the game. We also have these random zip lines and stuff as well scattered around, which helps you to traverse around the world, and of course you'll find, you know, enemies and the like as you explore around the area. Yeah, the stuff that you do pick up seems to fit into obviously your weapons, armor, that kind of thing, and then also these like junk or valuables as they're called, and they range from all sorts of different things, but don't have any utility outside of, as I mentioned, just being able to sell. So it kind of feels a little bit pointless. May as well just pick up more gold or something, but yeah, it's there to add this, help add this strength factor to the different factions within the game, whether that's the Grey Wardens or the Veil Jumpers or what have you. And increases their relative strength, even though in the story, well, yes, if it was properly dynamic, story events would raise or reduce them as well, not just about the stuff and side quests that you help complete within the game. Yeah, lots of like these little hub areas for each different region that you go and visit, and then there's a general like what's called a crossroad region, which allows you to transport through the illuvians, so the elvish mirrors that we play a big role in this particular game. I guess that's not actually that much of a spoiler because it's quite early on, and that's how Solus has been able to get around the world so quickly, is the fact that he's utilising these like fast travel portals, basically, which you then get to use yourself, and it plays part of the story and all that kind of thing. Which is funny, despite the fact they were in previous games like complete mysteries and, you know, like magical something or other, and now they're just like normal. That's not really anything to do with the exploration per se. That's more story, I suppose. So yeah, you'll find the exploration dotted around with like blight nodules that you have to destroy, and destroy them in a certain order in order to unlock chests, or to be able to get access to ladders to get more chests, or like random little pickups. Most of it is fairly linear. I mean, these are kind of like the open, more like the open world sections, but there are no like really major open sections per se. A lot of it is very much corridors, and you've got strict paths to go down. I mean, in this example here, it's obviously in the middle of a city called Treviso, so you know, there's a bit of rooftop climbing verticality more so, but yeah, mostly just roaming around streets, and like I say, feels quite similar to Dragon Age 2, and probably in that aesthetic as well, because aesthetically it is very similar to Kirkwall. That's what the place was called, I can't remember now. And yeah, it's kind of like similar. I mentioned that it's like Fable, but like the way the map markers and things are laid out, they are like dotted to help lead you to your objective. So they will move, to help you go down the right corridor to follow the map marker to get to the objective, rather than just saying, oh yeah, it's over here on the map, there you go, try and get there. Which, some people might find useful or helpful, but yeah, for me, kind of like a little bit too much hand-holdy, a little bit too much, like Fable in kind of all the wrong ways. And now I thought I'd leave you with a little bit of gameplay from one of the mid-game battle scenario things, just to try and give you a bit of a feel for kind of how epic the game tries to be at times.
This is going well. Surrounded by friends.
Surrounded by sharp claws. Whoever you are, face me!
Here I am back in the light now, finally free of my burden from playing Veilguard, and also having to explain what I think about individual aspects of the game. And now we're on the other side, which is nice, because I can tell you basically what I told you at the start, and that is that I think it's a relatively inoffensive game. It sort of, to me, draws a lot of parallels with Fable, and Fable not necessarily being like I guess for empirical metrics, being a good game, but a game that I enjoyed. This is kind of Fable if I didn't like it. As in, I think it has similar ideals and mechanics and like style, but doesn't look good. But doesn't sort of fit that niche for me, actually. And I think if it didn't have Dragon Age in the title, it probably wouldn't be as big of a deal as it has been made to be, I suppose, I would say. I think that's probably fair to say for a lot of games, though. But this one in particular. And yeah, it's okay if you enjoy that style of game and you're happy to go and spend your time in that kind of world. I don't know, because I haven't played the Assassin's Creed games, but I imagine that a lot of the stuff is quite similar to that in terms of the sort of, there's not even that much parkour-y elements, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. A lot of stuff just really dumbed down from like Origins, even Dragon Age 2, even and then Inquisition is the most stark. I actually went back and played some of Inquisition just to try and sort of get my head around whether Veilguard was, I guess, like as shallow as I thought it was. And it turns out that it definitely was, after having played 20 minutes or replayed 20 minutes of Inquisition, which is a far better game, I think, overall. Yeah, not overall, just in total. I think some of the stylistic choices in Veilguard are better than Inquisition. Veilguard certainly, I'd say, I don't know if it does look better, actually. But in terms of like world maps and that kind of thing, moving through the areas, it's probably a bit more slick than Inquisition. Inquisition definitely feels... Anyway, we're not here to talk about Inquisition. But yes, there have been... It's not all negatives, I suppose, but all the key fundamental RPG elements that you would come to Dragon Age for are have been slowly and now rapidly eroded away, particularly from our start point of Origins. So yes, from that point of view, you'll probably be, if you're like me, quite an avid RPG player and like Dragon Age player as well, or previously, you'll probably feel a little bit shortchanged by Veilguard, I think. And the cast of characters is not as dynamic or controversial that we've seen previously, and I don't know how much of that is like the Baldur's Gate 3 effect, where every character is sort of like morally quite grey, and everyone in Veilguard is very friendly, very like, yeah, go team. Even like where the conflict does exist, it's kind of like there is conflict, but it doesn't really matter because we're all pulling the same way, and they try to introduce this friction, but ultimately everyone is friends again very quickly, despite the fact, someone's hometown has been showered with blight when you've chosen to go and help one person rather than another. So, yeah, it is kind of difficult to enjoy even from that perspective. I don't think the story's too bad. It's okay. For Dragon Age, it's pretty subpar, I would argue. But now I guess I sort of have to come to some succinct conclusion on this game. And yes, saying that it's like Fable in all the negative ways that Fable isn't very good. But also just the fact that you don't really have that much agency and control over your party as a whole. You feel so disjointed in the fact that when I'm fighting, I don't have to care about the people that are around me. I use them for abilities, but they're effectively just like ability providers, and that's it. Which kind of reduces any investment in caring about your party. Like, part of it is overcoming the adversity of your big battles and that sort of thing. And in fact, you're only actually bothered about your own health bar, because that's all they're there to facilitate, either you restoring health or sort of being a distraction to enemies. And I think that's quite clear when you're fighting, as I mentioned, that enemies will single you and target you out. So basically it is just a shallow husk average game, and I'm being overly critical in that sense because it is Dragon Age and because there's such a huge budget and so long in development and that kind of thing. It feels like a real shame that it is not as good as it could be. And I think for that reason, I kind of have to give it like a 5 or a 5.5 out of 10. And it wasn't so offensive that I wanted to turn it off straight away. I definitely did longer on this than I did on Fallout London, for example. And yeah, in terms of like the graphical glitches and that kind of thing, I didn't experience anything like that. Some weird anomalies, but all stuff that I've seen in other Dragon Age games. So I don't want to pick this one out as being especially different. I think if you were comfortable with how things worked in the other ones, then you'd be comfortable with this one as well. And yeah, that's kind of my verdict, really. I don't think it's certainly for more casual, definitely for like really low casual RPG players, which that Fable description fits in perfectly. And for those people that are really invested, more so than me, in the Dragon Age continuing story, it really does make me want to go and play Dragon Age Origins again, or even Inquisition, really. And like I say, it makes me think a bit more highly of Dragon Age 2. So yeah, it's kind of a bit of a mixed bag for me. But it's certainly not as bad, I don't think, in the stuff that I experienced, bearing in mind only halfway through, as some of the criticism I've seen online for it. I think there are some choice lines in there in terms of like characters having certain, or the developers having certain agendas for the characters. But I kind of very quickly, very easy to let that sort of stuff go and wash, because they are all their own bespoke characters in the game, and you're not going to agree with everything they say. That's kind of an obvious way of, you won't be endeared to them, I shouldn't have thought, but yeah. And then subsequently not being controversial enough or not being morally grey enough. It's kind of a weird mixed bag. I have gone on for too long on this, so I just want to say thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you have played Veilguard, and I will now, upon publishing this video, go and find out what the end of the story was like, because I didn't want that to colour any of my opinion or views for this video, which I think is quite important. So I'm only judging it based on the time I've played. But let me know what you think. Do you agree with my assumption that this is the worst Dragon Age game? I know some people don't hate Dragon Age 2 as well, so yeah, maybe it's the children, me, that are wrong. Anyway, thanks for watching. See you very soon. Bye for now.